welcome to another edition, a playoff edition of the Goal Line Stand. Andrew Spaziano, Tom Condi, you know the drill. As always, here in studio, it is Wednesday night. We're at the bridge day between Wildcard weekend and the divisional round. How you doing, Tom?
Good. I'm ready for the second week of playoff football.
Yeah, I'm with you. I finally get to see my Patriots play and some interesting matchups, but we'll get to those another time. We're going to look at this past weekend's games, and I thought overall it was a good weekend. I think it's a really dumb cliche joke that people make, but it was a wild card weekend.
Yeah, we had a little bit of everything. Ups, downs, sideways. It was all touched upon. What game stands out for you?
I think you got to start with the first one, and the Titans and the Chiefs, and I think that stood out for me in the fact that that game was over at halftime, and all I can think of is last week when we were previewing the game, and I said multiple times, if Marcus Mariota is down 3 scores, they're done. And that's all I could think of is that comeback happened. I'm like, I'm going to eat my words in the podcast. And yeah, it was literally a tale of two halves. It was I don't know if it was the best game of the weekend, but it turned out to be like a surprisingly intriguing matchup.
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch, but here I am. I got to eat my words because a few weeks ago I had them out of the playoffs when we went over who belongs and who doesn't.
The Titans?
Titans was my team that I did not agree with making it to the playoffs. But when all said was done, they made it to the playoffs, and you know what? They pulled a victory out this past weekend. So, it's a testament to good play pays off, and they're playing pretty well right now. They did well moving Mariota outside the pocket this game. They had to do that in order to pull off a victory with a little bit of help from that Kansas City just not playing to their full potential for all 60 minutes of the game.
Definitely. So let's start with the first half because that was, like I said, tale of two halves. The Chiefs came out, and something I noticed right off the bat, I mean, it was a pretty, I don't know if I say flawless half, but it was a very good showing from them. Alex Smith had over 200 yards passing in the first half. I think he had 150 yards in the first quarter, and he was slinging around a yard. Something I noticed, though, is Tyreek Hill looked really slow out of the gate. He had a couple of drops. He finally got involved later in the first quarter, had a long reception, but he looked a little shaky throughout. But overall, their offense seemed to be clicking in the first half.
Yep, the first half, they were definitely playing how I said they were going to play if they wanted to win. They were running the ball, setting up play action, because the way they play in their offensive scheme, besides all jokes aside, besides the quick passes, they like the run to set up the play action and have Tyreek screaming down the sideline for usually a big play. And that was all good and plus some for that first half. That second half was a flip of the coin. It was just awful by them.
Well, they couldn't get anything going on offense. I did the math, and I think they had the ball for 10 minutes total in the second half. So they got outgained. They got outpossessed 2-1 in the second half. And I think what that did is that allowed the Titans to do what they could keep running their offense because they were holding the ball for so long. Because we had talked about last week that the Titans are a running team, and even without DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry had, I believe, 156 yards rushing. He had a great game, but they were able to use him because they kept holding on to the ball, and the Chiefs couldn't get anything going. And I think part of that is play calling, and the other part of that's execution.
The highlight of this game will be Kansas City choking and Andy Reid not coaching as well in the second half as he did in the first half. But hats off to Tennessee, 9-7 record. They earned their way into the playoffs, and this is why. They play for 60 minutes. Mariota, 19 for 31, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Is it a recipe for success, that stat line? No, not really, not when I look at it. But he played for all 60 minutes. Like you said, Derrick Henry, 23 attempts, 156 yards, and a touchdown. Their leading receiver was Delaney Walker with 6 receptions, 74 yards. He was a big playmaker that I touched on last week on the upcoming playoff preview about him and Travis Kelce, even though Travis Kelce was knocked out. And I think that helps the defense for Tennessee was a playmaker being knocked out in Kansas City's repertoire.
Well, I think that's something you definitely have to touch on. I think you, as you had said, you brought that up about how you were excited to watch the tight ends play, and I think it really came down to the fact in the second half that Travis Kelce wasn't out there, and their offense wasn't the same. And I heard this said in other analysis of the game that you could almost say Travis Kelce is one of those guys that he's like that vital to the offense, where if he's not out there, it's not the same team. Like, they have other playmakers, like you said, they have Hunt, they have Hill, Alex Smith is a good quarterback. But when he's not out there, it doesn't mesh right. He's not there going down the seam, drawing defenders away, and I think that's probably the main reason why their offense couldn't get going. They weren't prepared to adjust.
I see Kansas City not, the coaching staff not adjusting to him being out. They have weapons in Hunt and Hill, and I think when you have two weapons of that nature, one on the ground, one in the air, you got to be able to move the ball, score points, and not blow up like they did in the second half. Because that first half was so successful. But when Travis Kelce was knocked out, Tennessee had one weapon out that they didn't have to worry about. So that's why I tip my hat to the Titans. They played for 60 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else about this game I want to touch on, and something that's gotten a lot of press, is the officiating, because this play's been talked about a lot. It was the play where Mariota got sacked. They blew the whistle and he fumbled, which they called forward progress. And I think I know it's a judgment call, but I feel like that was just a really bad call by the officials. And it ended up the Titans got a field goal out of that drive. And I don't like attributing stuff like that to like the outcome of the game, because the game would flow differently if there's a turnover, etc. But I think the fact the Titans were able to get points, and those points obviously mattered in the end, I just think even though the Chiefs were able to go down and score before halftime, I think them getting points out of that drive at least gave them a little bit of momentum on offense, and I think that was a difference in the game.
Yeah, that's why they're called judgment calls.
Yeah, I just think it was really bad judgment. I've never really seen that called. Forward progress is usually called when you get a running back going through the hole. He gets stopped, backed up a little bit. I've never seen it called where a quarterback, unless like a quarterback's like grabbed by the legs and he's clearly just delaying the inevitable. He's going to get sacked. It was a weird application of the rule.
If I remember correctly, that was his first playoff game in 5 years?
Triplet?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure, but he made that other weird call where Mariota, play we haven't even talked about, when Mariota caught his own pass, which was great awareness by him, kind of like sidetracking to that. A lot of times when dudes get a ball bounce back to him, because it happens rarely, they either try to throw it again or they don't know what to do with it. I thought it was great awareness by him. He caught it and had the wherewithal to dive for the pylon too. Like, I thought that was a great reaction by him.
Yeah, I was thrown off when that happened. It was such a bang bang, whoa, what just happened type of moment. So once I calculated everything in my head, what I just saw, yeah, great awareness, great reaction. But he caught the ball and he knew what to do. And even if he was wrong, even if they blew it dead or whatnot, at least he tried to get points out of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And something I'll say about Marcus Mariota is that I'm still not really sold on him being a great quarterback or anything, but he showed a lot of guts in that game. He put his head down when he needed to. He was getting when he was running out of the pocket, he was making the plays he had to make, and I thought he showed a lot of poise for his first playoff game to be in that situation, be able to kind of keep a cool head trailing like that.
Yeah, that's why I said that passing stat line isn't a sexy one. It's not one that jumps off the stat sheet, but it was efficient. He has 8 rushing attempts for 46 yards.
I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah, he kept running out the pocket and playing with his legs, just playing efficient, and good for him. Good for win. That was a good win.
So the only other thing I want to touch on, you'd mentioned this to me before when we were preparing for the show, the Alex Smith trade rumors. I didn't know if you want to touch on that quick, because I know that was something that you had texted me the day of, and you're like, win or lose, this is going to be a big deal that story came out.
Yeah, he's going to count $17 million on the cap. They have Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be interesting because Alex Smith has such a low cap hit right now that look at the market value for efficient quarterbacks. Is he going to get you into the playoffs? He'll get you into the playoffs. He can't win a playoff game right now. He hasn't shown he can win a playoff game. But for 17 mil, a quarterback needy franchise might just pull the trigger on that, get him into their quarterback's room, onto their team, try and make a playoff push and be that team so he can win his first playoff game. Because, not first playoff game, but at least get him over the hump to chase a ring. Kansas City Chiefs drafted Mahomes in the first round. He's gonna have that rookie salary. So I can see them building upon that with that extra money, spending it on defense because they need some defensive help. They have the weapons on offense. I think Mahomes, when he learns another year under Andy Reid's system, he'll be a really good quarterback because everyone likes his mobility, his arm strength. So I think another year, this offseason actually will be his first offseason. I think big things of him coming from him.
Yeah, I agree with just about everything you said. I mean, it comes down in the game, the business side of it, the dollars and cents. And the fact is, when you traded up for a guy like Mahomes, it's clear that that's the direction you're going in. And now it seems as good a year as ever. It's Smith's best statistical career season. He had the best passer rating in the league. There's value for him on the market, so I think it makes sense to move him.
Sell high.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up because I think it's not a question of if, but when he gets moved this offseason. So the other game that was played on Saturday was a game I really have to give you credit for, Tom, because I feel like you definitely were more spot on with your analysis on it than I was. The Falcons-Rams, you were right. I mean, the Falcons were the more experienced team, and they made the plays they needed to make in that game, and I was very impressed by their outing. I felt like they had a game plan, especially when it came to stopping Todd Gurley in the passing game, and they followed it to a T. And, the Rams looked, for the first time all year, they looked like a team that was young and didn't have experience, and that was basically the feel of the whole game.
Yeah, they had some early crucial mistakes. They had that muff punt. It looked like they didn't go over in practice what happens when it hits someone on your team. It's a live ball. So they looked a little confused on that. And then they had a kick return fumble as well in the first half that didn't go their way. So it was a lot of early mistakes. They tried to withstand that so much, but with a young offense as a whole, they just couldn't withstand that.
Yeah, I think something that was pointed out I think it was Collinsworth pointed out in the broadcast was a very good point, is that when you're a returner, you got to tell your guys to get out of the way because those guys are coming down the field trying to set the blocks. You're not following the ball like you are. And I think that was the thing, is that Farrell Cooper didn't say whatever their code word is, like, get out of the freaking way because the ball's coming and it's coming up short. Because that's what happened, is that it went off a guy's foot and it kicked up weird, and that was the thing. And then it turned into a scrum, and Atlanta got the ball. And you said it last week that you can't let mistakes like that snowball, and I felt like they had another turnover on a kick return, same guy, and I felt
that's just ball control, though. The first thing that you're talking about, though, you got to go over that in practice so it's imprinted into your brain.
Yeah, but to the bigger point, that I think that they let things kind of get in their head and snowball a bit. I was very impressed going into halftime, though. They went down, kicked the field goal, got in the end zone. They were only losing 13-10. So when it went into halftime, my vibe on the game was, well, the Rams seem like they're back in this thing, and I felt like the Falcons were kind of on the ropes at that point.
They fell victim of kicking field goals, and I feel like both teams got into that, kicking field goals. Atlanta scored 12 points off of their field goal kicker's foot.
Yeah.
That's really not good. Offensively, you should be scoring touchdowns. Normally in the playoffs, you don't win by kicking field goals. But they were playing the Los Angeles Rams, and they were trying to do their own thing, trying to play well and whatnot. But I feel Los Angeles, they had 3 big plays, 20-plus plays that they didn't capitalize. 2 with Robert Woods. One was the big play before halftime.
Yeah, that diving catch.
Yep. And then they had one in the second half where he caught it on the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good catch.
He had a great game, Robert Woods.
And then Todd Gurley rips off a big chunk play, gets into the 25, but they got to kick a field goal. It wasn't a recipe for a playoff win.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I felt like Todd Gurley, he ended up, I think, with 100 yards rushing, but it didn't feel like it because he had, like you said, he had chunk plays in the second half. They bottled him up very well in the first half, and they basically said, Jared Goff, you're going to beat us, and your receivers are going to beat us. They only had 3 guys who had a reception until their final drive. They had Woods, they had Kupp, and they had Gurley. Those are the only guys that caught passes. Robert Woods, like, balled out. I tweeted that during the game. I was like, Robert Woods is balling it out tonight, and he's, like, carrying his team right now.
Yes, he did. 9 receptions, 142.
Yeah, he was in. He made some great catches. As you said, that one on the sideline was crazy. He just snagged that thing right out of the air, and it was a good throw by Goff. But
good body control.
Yeah, it just wasn't enough, though. And something that impressed me that the Falcons did is I didn't feel like they ran the ball in the first half, but I felt like they were still committed to trying to win through the air. But when they came out in the second half, they ran the ball 11 times on that 16-play drive, and they pounded it. They basically broke the Rams' will, I felt like. And they only kicked the field goal, but they took half the quarter away doing it.
In the game flow, watching it, it didn't feel like they was running the ball. But going over the game tape, Freeman and Coleman coming out in that second half was huge. They just kept running the ball down LA's throat and had, I think, on that play, on that drive, they kicked the field goal, which I already touched upon. Isn't a recipe for success,
right.
But, hey, a win's a win.
Yeah, and I think they just kind of realized that we had actually brought it up in previewing the game. The Rams don't have a great run defense statistically. They have a good front, but they're more built to rush the passer, whereas they're not necessarily good at clogging up the gaps and controlling the line of scrimmage. That was something that was really big in the game. I felt Atlanta controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I felt like when they had the ball, especially in the second half, they were pushing the Rams around and doing what they wanted, and they were running to set up the pass. And when the Rams had the ball, I felt like, I think they had 4 sacks on the game, but it just felt like they were knocking Goff off his timing. They weren't letting Gurley have his way with the defense, which he had a good statistical game running the ball, but he only had 10 yards receiving. And that was something I think that you can attribute to the game plan, and on top of that, just their ability to dictate the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, dictate the line of scrimmage, but not only that, they were playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Atlanta came turned up, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We might talk about, even though they scored 26 points, 12 points off of the field goal kicker, Bryant, but their defense was playing really well, and that's a young defense. It's another year, and they could close out games. It's a very good team. If that offense gets clicking and scores 30+, they could do damage.
Yeah, my impression on the Falcons is their offense isn't nearly as flashy as it was last year, but I think when they have the game plan rolling right, when they decide to run the ball, and that's a criticism we've both had of that team, is they seem to know that they can run the ball, but they choose not to, whereas they definitely need to pound the ball more, especially now that it's playoff time. I think they're more complete than they were last year. I think their defense is a lot better. I think they've shown that they can carry the team, but to your point, the offense has to execute better.
I like your outlook. I think they are a complete team.
Yeah.
Especially if they keep running the ball like they did in the second half coming out with Freeman and Coleman. I mean, they ran the ball over 30 times with both of them. 18 for 66 yards and a touchdown for Freeman, 14 attempts for 40 yards for Coleman. Their passing was good. Julio Jones, 9 catches, 94. Mohamed Sanu was in the game. It was a full, complete offense, but I don't like the field goals. I don't like the field
No,
goals.
I agree with you.
I don't like it.
And that's a fair point, and that's something we're going to get to when we start talking about the games for this upcoming week. But more on the games last week. So the Bills-Jaguars was probably, I don't know, it was a sloppy game, and I mean that in the fact that the defenses obviously played well, but in the Atlanta game, I felt like the defenses played well, but I thought that was because they were talented, whereas in the Bills-Jaguars, I felt it was because the offenses were inept. I mean, you got to look at the stat line. Blake Bortles had more yards rushing than he had passing.
Yeah, that's a funny stat.
That's
but,
crazy.
Hey, you gotta win. You gotta win. That's
Yeah.
an ugly win, but no matter how ugly or beautiful it is, a W is a W.
Yeah.
So I would take it.
No, definitely. Something I noticed early in that game, and I made a note of it on my phone as I was watching, the Bills, I thought, owned the first quarter. The Bills looked like they were dictating the tempo of the game. I really liked that they came out, and it felt like they were just taking what the Jaguars' defense gave them. I know Tyrod threw a pick in the first half, and it was a deflection. It just was one of those things. The ball pops up in the air. It got picked off. But I felt like they played a pretty clean game, especially in the first quarter. They didn't execute. They had, at the end of the second quarter, they had the ball at the 1 yard line, first and goal. Kelvin Benjamin gets offensive pass interference, kick a field goal. I think if they get in the end
Huge.
zone there, that's a totally different ball game.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, but offensive pass interference, that's a tough call, especially at the 1. You would like to run the ball with McCoy. You have
Yeah.
a strong offensive line that usually 8 times out of 10 they're gonna punch it in from the 1.
Yeah.
Tough call, and then they got pushed back, kick a field goal. But when you have talented, I think both defenses were talented. I don't think they were as inept or lack of talent than Atlanta and LA, but I like both defenses. But anyways, with both talented defenses playing subpar quarterback play from Bortles and Tyrod respectively, this is the type of game you're gonna get.
Yeah, I just felt like, I mean, Tyrod's what Tyrod is. He's not going to put up sexy numbers. But he's not going to turn the ball over, and that's kind of been what he's hung his hat on, is that he's basically the essence of a game manager. And we talk about Alex Smith as a game manager, but Alex Smith could throw over 300 yards, he showed this year. Whereas Tyrod Taylor is going to, 200 at most usually. He's mobile. But, I mean, you've said it before, their offense runs through McCoy, and
he was hampered by injury, and you could tell this game he
Yeah.
wasn't making his clean cuts. And even though he ripped off some nice gains, they had the right game plan, the Buffalo offense. I don't want to say stole, but they tweaked their own playbook and attacked Jacksonville like San Francisco attacked them and scored, what was
Yeah.
it, 40, 42?
yeah, it was
40
in the
some odd
mid-40s.
points. So they tried to have the Jacksonville defense play east and west.
Mm-hmm.
The forte for Jacksonville is north and south. They're going to come at you with their pass rushers, and they have the secondary and linebackers to scrape, fill holes, and smack you in the mouth. They tried to utilize the game tape that they had, which was San Francisco had success, and bring that to this game. They just didn't execute correctly. Tyrod Taylor, 17 completions, 37 attempts, 134 yards. It was a poor showing from him, but they tried to move him outside the pocket, get him on the run. It didn't work. They didn't execute. And, good for them for making it to the playoffs, but you're done.
Yeah, and they were an average team this year. I mean, they were a team that was kind of stuck in the fact that they wanted to rebuild, but they were having more success than they thought they were going to. You could tell that when they traded Darius, but then they traded for Kelvin Benjamin, so it was kind of like, I think management was stuck. Like, what are we trying to do here? But like you said, I mean, that's big for that city. 20 years for a playoff drought. Obviously, they wish it could have ended differently, but it was what it was. I think before we stop talking about this game, we do have to talk about Blake Bortles, because that first half was terrible.
Yep. But he was able to get him into field goal range before halftime.
Yeah, he was using those wheels.
It was unorthodox, but he ran for it, and he put that offense on his shoulders and just ran that ball.
You know what's my favorite line from that game was when Tony Romo was like, "See, when you complete checkdowns, you get yards." It was just like, and you could just tell, like, I feel like Tony Romo was sitting up there going, "Man, if my back wasn't so messed up, I could make some serious money right now because these guys suck." Like, especially Bortles is like, I could go there and like I could just pass circles around this guy.
On the game tape, it's gonna show Blake Bortles played to not screw the game up.
Yeah.
He played nervous. He played, I don't want to say he played scared, but he definitely played with the sense in the back of his mind, if I am to blow this game, I'm out of job next year no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
With this playoff win, even though he won very unorthodox, he at least gained a little bit of equity. Not much, but at least he got that playoff win, get to go play Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can say, to your point, that I didn't screw us out of the game. So,
Yeah.
You know, if you looked at his post-game interview, he was all smiles and whatever, and I swear that's what he was thinking. He's like, I didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
And we won. But you know what? I mean, it worked. It wasn't pretty. I mean, it was easily the worst game of the weekend. I mean, and granted, I think the other games they went up against were most of them were exciting. So
Depends on how you look at it. I like defensive games like that.
yeah, I just thought it was sloppy, and especially Bortles.
The offenses were sloppy.
Yeah,
The offenses were sloppy.
it was just frustrating watching him because like he literally couldn't complete a check down, and they're like, "There's a wind here," and I'm like, "Yeah, and if you win, you're gonna have to go to Pittsburgh. How's that gonna be?"
Tony was trying to give benefit of the doubt to Blake Bortles every chance he could. So it is what it is. They got the W.
Yeah.
On to next week for them.
Yeah, definitely. So the last game from the weekend is the one. It was definitely, I think, the most intriguing game just because of the way the game played out. And I think there's a lot of factors that went into the game that just the feel of it changed several times.
New Orleans becomes the second team to beat a team 3 times in one season.
Yeah. And
Congrats.
And they did it in a very different way. Drew Brees balled out, and Drew Brees
I wouldn't say different. I would just say different for this.
for the season is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Because Drew has always been Drew. They just didn't really need to show it like that this year.
Yeah. And I think I was thinking about it, and I feel like that's almost like I feel like they were kind of saving him in a weird way for the playoffs, like that, and not like they weren't saving him for the playoffs in the fact that like they assumed they were going to make the playoffs, but I think in a weird way it worked out that way because he's fresh because he hasn't been throwing the ball 40 times a game. He's been handing it off. He's been throwing short passes to Kamara, and it just worked out. I mean, he had the game of the season for him, and I mean, it was beautiful watching him throw. I mean, where he was putting the ball, I mean, there were 3 or 4 passes in that game, and you know, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman especially was gushing over it. I mean, he's placing the ball and where only his guy can get it, and it was phenomenal from him.
Drew Brees has always been talented like that every year since San Diego.
Yeah. No, it's true. But the game, like I touched on before, I mean, it had a lot of different facets that went into it. I thought first off, New Orleans, for all their offense did in the game, they didn't look very good. I think they went 3 and out the first 2 drives. Carolina on their second drive pushes it down the field, and Graham Gano missed a 25-yard field goal. He just shanked it. He missed it. And a few plays later, Ted Ginn catches an 80-yard bomb, and I felt like
That was Drew Brees' like second or third read too.
yeah. And, I mean, he was open, man. I mean, Ted Ginn's one of the best deep threats in the game. He's a burner.
The play design was for Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I believe it. I just felt like that changed the entire feel of the game. I felt like the Panthers came out. I thought the Saints just came out flat. I thought, offensively at least, I thought they came out and they just didn't look right. But once they got that going, their offense started clicking, and that just changed the whole complexion of the game.
First couple drives, it was definitely testing out Carolina's defensive scheme because this is their third time playing a meaningful game, twice in the season and right now for the playoff. So those few drives were to figure out how the defensive alignments were going to be for Carolina. So
Yeah.
when they figured out today's not going to be a run game with Kamara and Ingram. Kamara 10 attempts, 23 yards and a touchdown. Mark Ingram 9 attempts for 22 yards. The game flow just happened to be a Drew Brees heavy game, and Drew Brees, he was ready for it. 33 attempts, 23 completion, 376 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the Drew Brees that we've all gotten accustomed to. But since they've had Kamara and Ingram just dominate in the gridiron, they haven't really needed Drew Brees to do this.
Yeah. I think something else that came out of the first half is kind of what you're saying about Atlanta. Carolina couldn't get in the end zone. I mean, if you looked at the score, it was 3 touchdowns from the Saints to 3 field goals from the Panthers. And that was just like, I was sitting there at halftime and I felt like this game isn't completely over, but like Carolina can't get in the end zone. You can't keep up with this offense the way they're playing and expect to just keep up with field goals. I was like, if that's the way this game's going to go, it's going to be over real quick because it doesn't look like Breeze is slowing down anytime soon.
Atlanta was fortunate to have a game where it didn't really matter they were kicking field goals because they were just scoring points. This game, they couldn't win a game by kicking field goals. Like you said, in the first half, they were out of the end zone, and rather, they were out of the end zone all the way up until the fourth quarter where they came 14 points in the fourth quarter. So, in this game, like I mentioned, and especially playoff football, you can't expect to win games by kicking field goals.
You know, we've talked about Drew Brees, and rightly so, but you got to give some props to Cam Newton. Good Cam showed up. I think that was something we talked about, and I really didn't think good Cam was going to show up just because the last couple of weeks that we were going, and credit to him, he had a great game. He, especially in the fourth quarter, felt like he took over that game on their offense, and like he's capable of, and we all know he's capable of, and he was able to get McCaffrey going. He was hitting Olsen a lot, which was something that they really needed to do, and you know, he kept them in the game.
Yeah, he had 200-yard receivers in this. Greg Olsen, Christian McCaffrey. Cam Newton, he definitely played like we all want to see him play. He plays with such athleticism. It's fun to watch. So with this stat line, 24 from 40, 349, 2 touchdowns, rushing. He had 8 attempts for 37 yards. The athleticism of Cam Newton is fun to watch. So when he plays like that and he keeps his composure, it's fun to watch. He just happened to not get the W.
Yeah, I thought he definitely... One of my criticisms of Cam is that I always feel like he only throws at one speed and that he's a little loose with the football, but there was one pass, I think it was the Funches on the sideline, and he fitted into a window. I think it was literally the size of like a quarter. And I was just sitting there going, man, I don't always agree with him, but he's got some balls. He just, he stuck that thing where only his guy could get it, and he had the confidence he could make the throw. And they needed that down the stretch. Like you said, it wasn't enough. I think the one part we haven't touched on in this game is the last 2 drives. So Carolina was losing 24-12. They go score. Then New Orleans goes down and scores. Then McCaffrey catches that 56-yard pass, which that kid can move. I think we all knew it, but that was like the first time in a game I saw of them all year that he just got the open field, and it's like you're not going to catch him.
He shifted to a whole other gear.
Yeah, and that was a beautifully run route. It was a little angle route, and he's a great route runner. We all knew that when he was drafted, but it was really on showcase in this game.
Stadium fell silent.
Yeah. Well, it was only when he scored, there wasn't... It was like the last half, the last third or so of the fourth quarter. Yeah, there was...
Yeah, because
there was
then
4 minutes left.
that sequence after with Drew Brees and Sean Payton agreeing to go for it on 4th down.
So what did you think of that?
No confidence in your defense?
Yeah, I didn't think it made a lot of sense because Carolina had no timeouts. You had the ball at midfield. You pinned them. It was right at the 2-minute warning. So you pinned them at the worst case, I say to 20.
Worst case, yeah, you'd get a touchback. You try and shoot for inside the 10.
Yeah, but I mean, the worst case scenario, they're gonna go 80 yards. They got no timeouts, and it can be done. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, clock management, it would have tested the Panthers. I thought they called timeout after the first. They tried drawing them off, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna punt. They came out again, and it was like, all right, they're going to try to draw them off again because they just take the 5 yards. I mean, it's not a huge deal. It actually gives your punter a little bit more space.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay. The play broke down. They tried, I think it was like a rollout pass, and Breeze, I mean, he just floated one up there, and it got intercepted. I don't think that was honestly an interception. I don't think he ever got full possession of the ball, and I don't know why it wasn't reviewed. Mike Adams. I mean...
Yeah, usually any play that has a change of possession does get reviewed, but to today's standards, what is a catch? I don't argue anymore. I honestly don't. It is what it is. If you're gonna tell me it's a catch for this game, okay. And if you're gonna tell me it's not a catch for this game, okay. I've torn my hair out trying to understand the catch rule, but I don't know.
No, man, I hear you.
But Carolina, they had the opportunity to pull it off, to steal one here, and the Saints would have gotten egg on their face after going for it.
Yeah.
If Carolina pulled it off, that would have been a shocker.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, the reason why I bring the interception up is because that played crucially into the outcome of the game because that was 20 yards right there.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily fault Mike Adams for trying to intercept the ball because that's instinct. That's reaction. You know, you could sit here and you could play armchair defensive back and say, well, you just knocked the ball down. But when you're in the heat of the moment, your instinct is try to catch the ball. I just don't think, and I'd have to watch the replay again closely. It looked very close, and I know Ron Rivera, after the game, that was one of the things that he complained about was that it never got looked at. He's not even saying necessarily that it should have been overturned, but it should have gotten looked at. At that stage, at that point in the game, I would agree with him. I also felt like there's another game the officials are kind of weird. So Carolina gets the ball back. The intentional grounding happens, which I think was the right call. I think he was still in the tackle box. They tried arguing a guy was in the area. I didn't really see it. But the alternate official had to come out in the field and say there's a runoff here because there was 34 seconds left and there should have been 24. The alternate ran on the field. It was like, you guys got to take 10 seconds off the clock. It was just... And I understand officials, there's so many rules. I mean, there's about 20 different parts to the catch rule at this point they have to keep track of. So I understand losing track of something like that.
Especially at the end of the game and all the hype and hoopla going on.
Yeah. So I get it, but at the same time, it's like you guys almost like crucially affected the outcome of the game. 10 seconds at that point is a lot of time. So I just thought that was... It definitely wasn't... I don't know if I say it was a bad weekend for officials, but that was definitely the last 2 minutes there definitely wasn't a great showing by them between the interception that I think should have been looked at the very least and almost botching that intentional grounding.
The NFL shot for 500, right? 2 out of 4 games
Yeah.
had officiating issues. Yeah, to me, neither one of them was that big of a deal. The intentional grounding... And then not going into the review to going over that interception. Would it changed the outcome of the game? Maybe. But it is what it is. The tickets are already printed for this week.
Yeah.
So it's nothing that's going to change if the NFL was like, oh, yeah, we screwed up. That should have been that. We can't play the game over, so it is what it is. There was opportunities for Carolina to win the game from themselves and New Orleans, for that matter, as well, to leave it without the referees interfering and having a hand in the outcome of the game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think ultimately, to further what you're trying to say is that Carolina shot themselves in the foot kicking field goals, and their offense didn't really start clicking until the second half. And that they put themselves in a hole. And the Saints, that Sean Payton fourth down doesn't end up being anything of consequence because they won the game. But, I mean, that would have been a long offseason sitting there going, second-guessing him on something that he deserved to be second-guessed on, because I don't agree with that.
What could have been
if
they had lost
Yeah,
it.
and I thought the way Carolina got that drive going, I'm like, crap, they might blow this game, and that's just going to, like you said, egg on the face. That was going to be nasty.
Yeah.
But they made the plays. They forced Newton into intentional grounding, sacked him on the fourth down.
I will say a win like this for New Orleans makes them a very dangerous team.
Yeah.
Watch out for New Orleans, because right now, the way they're playing, they just showed that they don't need Kamara and Ingram to beat you. They can unleash the Kraken, which is Drew Brees, and have him throw for 300 yards again and win him the game. And then if you're playing defensively to stop the pass, hey, you got Kamara and Ingram to eat that up. So they are a dangerous team to look out for.
Absolutely. So, Tom, that's all the analysis I have from Wildcard Weekend. Before we wrap up, anything on any of the games you want to add? I know you gave your little bit there about the Saints.
No, I am looking forward to this weekend's. The matchups are intriguing, so I'm ready to watch the divisional round.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to wrap up this podcast. Stick around for our next episode, which will be coming out shortly after this one. We're going to break down divisional weekend and all those intriguing matchups that Tom was talking about. But until then, Andrew Spaziano, Tom Condi, see you soon, and enjoy divisional weekend.